So what's the way out of this conflict? The cycle of war and murder that has gone on for more than 70 years. Experts often talk about the two-state solution. It's something that India supports, as do many others. What is the two-state solution? In simple words, the creation of two states, one for the Jews, called Israel, and one for the Arabs, called Palestine. The two-state solution was first pitched back in 1937, and on paper it looks simple enough, but in reality, it is not. Historians call it the most intractable conflict in the world. What do the people say? This is what a Gallup poll found in 2013. 70% Palestinians in the West Bank support the two-state theory, 48% in Gaza, 52% in Israel. So the people are willing to live as neighbors. Then why is the promise of Palestine still unfulfilled? To understand this, we must look at the politics of Palestine, both domestic and international. Who speaks for the Palestinian community? Who is their leader? And why are Arab states suddenly wary of supporting their cause? Let's talk about the Arab states first. Until now, choosing between Israel and Palestine was easy for them. They always backed Palestine. But this time, it's not so simple. Israel is now a recognized partner of the Arab world. Last year, 4 countries normalized ties with Israel: the UAE, the Sudan, Bahrain and Morocco. Others were reportedly going to follow suit. So what do these countries do now? They make vague statements of support for Palestine, watch the conflict closely, but try not to engage in it. Palestine is on the back burner because the Arab world has bigger priorities now. They see Israel as a strategic partner, as a market with immense potential, as an ally against Iran, against Turkey and the Muslim Brotherhood. But don't get me wrong, the Arab people still support Palestine. They're flooding social media with hashtags. They're marching on the streets. The only difference is that their leaders do not share this enthusiasm anymore. Their condemnation of Israel is more out of compulsion than concern, and it's been like that for a while. That is the regional politics. What about the internal politics of Palestine? For decades, it was dominated by this man, Yasser Arafat. The Palestinian struggle was synonymous with him. Until he was alive, there was unity in the movement. But in 2004, Yasser Arafat died, and with his death, factionalism crept in. Today, Palestinian politics is a story of fragmented leadership. In the West Bank, you have the Fatah Party, founded by Arafat. They call the shots. In Gaza, it's the Hamas. You've probably heard a lot about them this last week. So tonight, we want to tell you who they are and what they seek to achieve. What is the Hamas? Hamas was founded in 1987, around the same time as the first Intifada or uprising. They were an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. Unlike the Fatah, Hamas has a military wing, and they're not shy of using it. Canada, the EU, the US, Israel and Japan have listed them as a terror group. What about India? New Delhi does not classify Hamas as a terror group. In 2018, they abstained from United Nations vote condemning them. Both civilian and military targets are fair game for Hamas. Some of their attacks have been classified as war crimes. But before their military adventurism, Hamas was actually a political success. They won the 2006 Palestinian elections. They were set to dominate West Bank politics. And that's when the West stepped in. The powers of the Western world, that West. And they made 2 key demands from Hamas. One is a commitment to non-violence, and the second is the recognition of Israel. Hamas refused both. You see, unlike the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization of Yasser Arafat, the Hamas does not recognize the state of Israel. They consider violence to be a legitimate tool of the movement. And thanks to all of this, foreign aid dwindled. Palestinian leaders grew uneasy. The split between Hamas and Fatah widened. In 2007, it reached a tipping point with the Battle of Gaza. The battle ended with Hamas taking over the Gaza Strip, and since then, they have ruled this Palestinian enclave, the Gaza Strip. And in these 14 years, their approach has not changed. The Hamas prefers rockets over diplomacy, so they make more headlines than the Fatah. But how representative are they? And don't be fooled by the Hamas's claims of selfless fighting. Their leaders are not even in Gaza. Most of them live in fancy hotels in Turkey, away from the war. They have their swimming pools and their country clubs, even private bodyguards, while people in Gaza live under rocket fire. Forbes listed Hamas as the third richest terror group in the world, the third richest. Their annual income was $700 million. So the answer is no. Hamas does not speak for all Palestinians. Most of them would prefer a peaceful solution to this conflict. But Hamas is dead set on military victories. And none of this is surprising. If you look at history, every movement has two factions, the moderates and the extremists. Hamas is the extremist group here. Their only claim to legitimacy is the fact that Israel is bombing them. But war cannot be the way forward, especially against a superior power like Israel. The little gains that Palestine has made have been through diplomacy. There have been none on the battlefield, none. So the picture of Hamas fighters resisting Israel is a romanticized reality. It makes for great headlines, yes, but nothing else. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.